Welcome to the last workshop covering the new Small Business Relief Grants sponsored by SelectCobb, which is a part of the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce. The Cobb County of Commissioners has allocated $50 million to be distributed by SelectCobb to small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This grant program was launched on Monday, June 8th, and the application process will close on Friday, June 26th at 5 p.m. As you complete your application, be sure to review all of the webinars on the SelectCobb grant site as well as the frequently asked questions. This is Cecily Welch again of Welch Financial Advisors, the accountants you can understand. This is the final workshop covering the SelectCobb Small Business Relief Grants. I'll be answering some of the questions the business community has asked, and I'll be displaying examples. Remember, there are only a few days left to apply. I'll show examples of the documents as well as go over the grant disbursement process again. We will also look at how this interacts with other relief programs and finally cover next steps. Business owners have asked for clarity on what's required for payroll. Well, the answer is it depends. It depends on if you have employees, and if you do, how does your company process payroll for those employees? If you do not have any employees, then you would mark this on the application. When you do this, the application updates and won't ask you for Form 941 or for payroll registers. Instead, the committee will rely on reviewing your tax returns and financial statements. If you do have employees and your payroll provider provides services for your business, you'll have the applicable payroll journal and Form 941s to meet the requirements. If you do have employees, but they are leased, or whatever term you use to describe when a different company manages all of your employees for you, leased employees or professional employer organization or PEO. So that means you've outsourced portions of the payroll and HR compliance piece to a specialist. You still have to provide the same information, but the format will be different because you have to tie how their reports tie to your company. There'll be an example following. Can you apply if it's just you? Maybe a contractor now and then to help out, but really it's just you. Absolutely. When you appropriately select just a sole proprietor with no employees on the application amends and will no longer ask you questions for payroll, will no longer ask you questions for your certificate of organization or certificate for existence. Please note that since the last workshop, the committee has had an opportunity to review some of the requirements. In the prior workshop, I indicated the full tax return will be required for businesses reported on Schedule C. However, this has now changed and is indicated on the frequently asked questions on the website. The business owner only needs to supply the applicable Schedule C, not the entire tax return. Having a PEO, or professional employer organization, does not disqualify you from the grant. Instead, it just adds a bit of complexity to the amount of documentation you have to provide. SelectCobb does need to validate that you have employees and that they're full-time and that they're appropriately being reported to the IRS on Form 941. So either in the cover page or in a physical report from the PEO, you'll need to do that reconciliation, your business and how that ties to the bigger 941. Here is an example of a payroll register or payroll journal. It lists all the employees, it lists the timetable, the date of the check, the amount each employee was paid, the taxes associated with each employee, as well as the number of hours that employee worked. Here is another payroll register produced by a different payroll provider. So it looks a little different, but it still has the same information on it. If you have outsourced your employees and the payroll provider for that, you may need to run special reports or have the provider run special reports to isolate your employees. Here's an example of the different criteria a payroll provider or PEO should be able to produce reports for. Specifically request what you need from your payroll provider. Depending on the terminology your PEO uses, you may have to experiment to find the right selection criteria to produce the report you need. Check the report in detail to make sure it has the required information. This is an allocation schedule for aggregate Form 941 filers. This would have the PEO's EIN, and it would have your firm's specific reporting for the 941. Here is where the detail information from your business flows to the IRS Form 941. Notice how the total wages of $500,000 matches the breakdown from the allocation schedule. The payroll journal ties to the allocation schedule. The allocation schedule ties to the Form 941. This is the documentation you need to provide for leased employees. Save all of these documents as one document to be uploaded in the section that asks for your Business 941. There have still been a few questions regarding which documents are required. Well, it depends on the type of business you have. All businesses still require a current 2020 business license. However, if you're a sole proprietor, then you do not need to provide articles of incorporation, certificate of existence, or certificate of organization, because those aren't required by the state. But if you do have a separate legal entity, then you do need to provide any one of these documents: article of organization, certificate of existence, your annual renewal, and as mentioned in an earlier workshop, you can get this information from the Secretary of State's website. The business license is what gets framed and hung on your wall. If you're a home-based business, then it's probably in a file cabinet somewhere. What if you don't have a business license, or you've applied for one but it hasn't come in the mail yet? Still apply for the grant. Submit a copy of your 2019 license and a receipt showing you have paid for the 2020 business license. If your application is funded, you'll have to submit a copy of the updated 2020 business license prior to receiving any disbursement. Now you've gathered all your documents. How do you upload them? Definitely combine documents that have multiple pages so that it's just one document. When you get to that section of the application, you just have space to upload one document for payroll documents for 941s. So combine that into one PDF. Same thing with your tax return or with the financial statements. Be sure to combine multiple pages into one PDF. If you receive the grant, you'll be asked to sign an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. That's a legal contract between you and the county. It stipulates everything that you're agreeing to: the amount of the grant, how the county is going to disperse the funds, that you agree to monthly reporting on how the funds are spent, and that you agree to provide substantiation for how all the funds are spent. Recall, the committee's goal is to have notifications out by July 31st. And yes, you will be notified whether or not you receive the grant, so keep an eye out for communication. Once your MOU is signed, the committee will disperse 50% of the grant funds. You'll need to spend these funds and submit substantiation of expenditures within 60 days. The business will then receive the second disbursement. This second part of the grant must all be spent and substantiation sent to the committee by December 1st. Any funds not spent by then will have to be returned. Business owners continue to ask, how does the Select Grant Program interact with the relief programs they're familiar with? Recall that recipients of the SBA PPP or EIDL program do have to divulge that on the application. And this first round of review will not include those businesses. However, provided there's opportunity, the committee will open up the review for those businesses that did receive the PPP or EIDL. So yes, still apply. This question you see on the application, the requirement that you not be involved in a bankruptcy or ineligible by a federal department or agency, is part of the CARES Act, and these grant funds come from the CARES Act. Therefore, if you answer yes to this question, your business is not eligible for this grant, and this is similar to the PPP loan program. How many employees do you have? There's been some confusion with this, and that's because with the exact same numbers, your full-time employees are calculated differently for the SelectCobb grant then they're calculated for the SBA's PPP program. I'll do an example. Henderson Auto has 6 employees. 3 work 20 hours a week, 2 work 35 hours a week, and 1 works 40 hours a week. There are only 3 employees who work 30 or more hours per week. Therefore, there are only 3 full-time employees for the SelectCobb grant. However, FTEs, full-time equivalents, is calculated by taking the number of hours and then dividing this by the number of hours that it takes to be full-time. So this company calculates full-time employees, only 3, differently for SelectCobb than it does for the PPP loan. FTEs, full-time equivalents, which would be 4.25 FTEs. So the same company, different number of employees. Be sure you're following the requirement for the SelectCobb grant. How else is the SelectCobb grant similar to the PPP loan that you're familiar with? All funds have to be disbursed by a certain date, and all expenditures have to be substantiated. SelectCobb nor the SBA are going to take your word for it that you spent the money how you indicated you were going to spend it. Here is a good overview of the other programs that business owners have been asking about. A good resource for assistance with these other relief programs is through the University of Georgia's Small Business Development Center at Kennesaw State University. The SelectCobb grant does require you to indicate during the application process exactly how you plan on spending the funds. And it does require you to spend them how you indicated you were going to spend them. The SelectCobb grant is a grant. It doesn't turn into a loan. It doesn't have any other stipulations, just that you use it according to the requirements. Also, the SelectCobb grant will count as taxable income. Ends up being a net on your tax return because you are able to deduct the expenses that you use the grant funds for. The PPP loan, however, doesn't require listing how the funds will be spent at the time of the application. If it's not spent according to their requirements, it converts to a loan and must be paid back. And for the PPP loan, neither the monies given nor the expenses paid with those monies are taxable income nor tax-deductible business expenses. Hopefully you've gotten enough additional information to complete the application comfortably. We've gone through some of the documents and given examples, reiterated the timing of disbursements, and given you a resource to look up different information regarding the other relief programs. So next steps. If you submit the application and have some corrections, don't submit a new one. Instead, send an email to SelectCobb. They will open the application and make it editable again. You only have until Friday at 5 p.m. to resubmit. If you get a question from SelectCobb, you get correspondence from them asking for clarification. You only have 72 hours to respond, so be sure to look out for communications. Hopefully you've benefited from the webinars, workshops, and frequently asked questions on the SelectCobb website, and you've prepared a great application for consideration. So, let's be sure to submit your application by this Friday at 5 p.m. Respond to any questions from the committee within 72 hours. Ensure the email address is in your safe rules for your email provider. And check your spam and trash folders just in case. Keep copies of everything you've submitted. And finally, good luck.